All right, so today we're diving deep into some Buddhist wisdom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's the Anuruddha Sutta. And, it's really interesting how this text kind of gives us a roadmap for anyone who's really looking to, benefit from the Buddhist teachings.
Yeah, it's a good one for that. And the backstory on the sutta is really fascinating, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the Buddha, he actually overhears the monk Anuruddha.
Oh, wow.
Deeply contemplating these qualities, and then just decides to, chime in, with
Right.
even more wisdom.
It's like getting bonus points from the wisest teacher ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So this sutta outlines 8 qualities, which are known as the 8 great man's thoughts.
We're going to be focusing on the first one today,
Okay.
called apishasayam.
Yes.
Now, I have to say, when I first came across this term, I kind of just thought it was about living a simple life.
Yeah.
Just having low hopes.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it.
Right.
Yeah, there really is. The word apicchasayam does translate to meagerness or having low hopes, but it's not about being lazy or lacking ambition at all.
Okay.
The sutta actually uses a really interesting analogy about a frog living at the bottom of a well.
A frog in a well.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with apicchasayam?
Okay, so picture the frog stuck at the bottom of this well.
Okay.
It can only see this tiny little patch of sky, right?
Right.
And it thinks that that's the entire universe.
Oh, wow.
So its whole perspective is totally limited.
Yeah.
And because of that, its desires are also limited based on that ignorance. So it thinks its world is small. So it only has these meager desires.
Oh, I see.
That's false apicchasayam.
Oh, okay.
True apicchasayam comes from wisdom.
Yeah.
From really understanding the true nature of things and then aligning your desires with your ultimate purpose.
Oh, so it's not just arbitrarily limiting your desire.
No, not at all. It's about understanding what your life's purpose is and then focusing on what's actually essential to reach that.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense. So how do we apply this idea of apicchasayam to our own lives?
Right.
What is the ultimate goal that we should be aligning our desires with?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's a question that every single person has to answer for themselves.
Okay.
But from a Buddhist perspective, that ultimate goal is liberation,
Okay.
freedom from suffering.
Right.
And this applies to everyone, lay people and monks alike.
So how does apicchasayam manifest differently for lay people and monks?
Okay, good question.
They have such different, roles and responsibilities in the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
So for someone who's a lay person, right, apicchasayam might mean recognizing that true happiness, it doesn't come from just constantly chasing after material things
All right.
or social status.
Right.
It might mean being content with what you already have, focusing on providing for your family, and then, engaging in activities that really nourish your spiritual growth. So it's about finding a balance between fulfilling those worldly responsibilities without getting trapped by that illusion that happiness comes from all those external things.
Exactly. Now, for a monk,
Okay.
apicchasayam, it manifests in a more renounced lifestyle.
Okay.
So they're relying on donations for just the basic needs.
Right.
They minimize their possessions and they focus primarily on spiritual practice.
Right.
So that meagerness, right, allows them to totally dedicate themselves fully to the path of liberation.
Okay, so it's not like a one-size-fits-all.
Exactly.
It's more about applying that principle of apicchasayam
Yeah,
based on your own specific circumstances.
precisely. Now, the sutta, it also introduces this concept of mahishasa.
Ahicchasa.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's basically the opposite of apicchasayam.
Oh.
So that's probably not something that we want to cultivate, right?
I'm guessing not.
Mahishasa means greatness or excessive expectations.
Oh, okay.
And it's fueled by 2 main things: greed, which is, wanting more and more, and then avarice, which is constantly wanting better and better.
So it's that never-ending treadmill.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
You're never satisfied.
I remember reading a story about a politician who actually refused a pay raise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he felt like he had enough to fulfill his purpose
Wow.
and that any more money would just complicate things.
That's a great example.
Would you say that's a good example of apicchasayam in action?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really highlights that understanding that more isn't always better.
Right.
The Sutta compares mahishasa to a constantly growing fire or a vast, ever-expanding ocean.
Yeah.
It's never satisfied.
So if apicchasayam leads to that contentment,
Yeah.
I imagine that mahijasa could lead to some pretty negative consequences.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah. When we're constantly just chasing after more and more and more, we can lose sight of what really matters.
Right.
The Sutta even warns that mahishasa can lead to sinfulness.
Oh, wow.
When our desires just completely outstrip our resources, we might be tempted to fulfill them in ways that aren't ethical.
Yeah, like if you convince yourself that you need that bigger house or that fancier car, you might be willing to cut some ethical corners to get it.
Exactly. And our modern world, right, with this huge focus on consumerism and material success, it just fuels that mahikasa fire.
It really does.
Yeah.
It feels like we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to want more to upgrade our lives.
Yeah.
And to never be satisfied with what we have.
Totally. It's like this never-ending cycle.
Whether it's like houses or cars or clothes or gadgets,
Yeah.
even social media followers.
Yeah.
It's relentless.
The Sutta specifically mentions houses and land vehicles, food and status,
Okay.
as things that people tend to just crave excessively.
Right. And it's not just confined to one culture or country anymore, is it?
No, not at all. With the internet and globalization, we're all part of this global village of mahikasa.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It seems like the irony is that the more we chase after these external things,
Right.
the further we get from our true selves.
Exactly. The pursuit of mahikasa can make us lose sight of our values, our purpose, and ultimately our own happiness.
Right. It's like we're getting lost in this maze of our own making.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from that maze?
Yeah. How do we start cultivating more apichasyam?
How do we even recognize when those mahikasa traps are happening?
That's a great question. And the Buddha actually identified 4 specific types of avarice or mahicha to help us with that.
Oh, really?
These are like warning signs
Okay.
pointing to areas where our desires might be leading us astray.
Gotcha.
The first one is true avarice,
Okay.
which is the most straightforward one, an excessive attachment to material possessions.
Okay, that one's pretty clear.
Yeah.
What about the other 3?
Okay, well, the second one might surprise you. It's called Dutanga avarice.
Sutanga avarice.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
So Dutangas are ascetic practices, specific disciplines that monks and sometimes lay people undertake to purify the mind and eliminate defilements. But Dutanga avarice is when someone becomes fixated on these practices.
Gotcha.
And they start doing them not for genuine spiritual growth, but to show off their superiority or to gain some sort of recognition from other people.
So it's like spiritual materialism.
It is.
Instead of wanting a fancy car, you want spiritual bragging rights.
Exactly. It's still about wanting more. It's just in a different domain.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's number 3?
The third one is polymathy avarice.
Polymathy avarice.
Yeah. It's an insatiable thirst for knowledge.
Okay, I think I might struggle with that one.
Really?
Yeah, I love learning new things and, diving deep into different subjects.
There's nothing wrong with seeking knowledge.
Right.
But polymathy avarice is about hoarding information for its own sake without any real application or benefit.
Oh.
It's like having a library full of books and never reading any of them.
Ouch. Yeah, that one might be a problem for me.
So it's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about how we use it,
Okay.
how we integrate it into our lives,
Right.
and how we let it guide our actions.
Okay, that makes sense. So what's the last one?
The last one is adhigama avarice.
Adhigama.
Yeah, adhigama refers to spiritual attainments,
Okay.
things like reaching a certain level of meditation or insight.
So this one is about craving that recognition
Yes.
for our spiritual achievements.
Exactly.
Like you want a gold medal for enlightenment.
It's about the desire to flaunt your spiritual progress, to seek validation from others for how advanced you are.
Okay.
But again, the problem isn't the achievement itself, it's the motivation behind it.
Right. So you could be super advanced.
Yeah,
But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons,
exactly.
then that's the problem.
Yeah,
Okay, so we have these 4 different types of avarice to watch out for.
right.
But how do we know if we're truly cultivating apikasayam?
Yeah,
Especially given that it manifests so differently
right.
for lay people and monks.
For sure.
Can you give us some more concrete examples of what that looks like?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's start with true ekachasayam in lay life. It's about understanding that material possessions and worldly success, they're not the ultimate sources of fulfillment. It's about finding that contentment with what you already have,
Yeah.
using your resources wisely, and focusing on actions that contribute to your own spiritual growth and the well-being of others.
Right. So it's not about renouncing everything or like having no ambition at all.
No.
It's more about living a balanced life that's aligned with your values and your purpose.
Exactly.
Without getting trapped by that whole wanting more.
Right. Now, for someone living the monastic life,
Okay.
Epicchasayam takes on this more renunciate form.
Right.
The focus shifts to really embracing a simple life,
Yeah.
relying on alms for sustenance,
Okay.
and minimizing material possessions to really dedicate yourself to the path of liberation.
So their apicasayam is like stripping away all those external distractions so they can really focus
Yeah.
on that inner work. Okay, so like two sides of the same coin, but they're both rooted in this deep understanding of what really matters.
Precisely. And it's important to note that both paths, they require mindfulness and effort to cultivate true apicasayam.
Right.
It's not something that just happens automatically.
Okay, so we've talked about those different manifestations of apicasayam.
Right.
But how do we know if we're falling into those mahikasa traps?
Yeah.
Especially those more subtle ones.
Hmm?
What are some clues we can look for?
Well, the Sutta offers some great guidings on this.
Okay.
Let's take true avarice, for example,
Yeah, okay.
that attachment to material possessions.
Right.
The text talks about this idea of knowing the limits when it comes to those basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, medicine.
Right, so it's not about depriving yourself or living this super austere life.
Yeah.
It's about understanding what you actually need versus what you just want.
Exactly. For example, having a comfortable and safe place to live, that's essential.
Yeah.
But does that mean you need a sprawling mansion with a 5-car garage?
Right. Probably not.
Probably not.
It's about recognizing when those desires for material things go beyond what's truly necessary.
Yeah, it's finding that sweet spot where your possessions support your well-being,
Right?
but they don't become the source of attachment.
Right, or anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what about those less obvious forms like Dutanga avarice?
Yeah.
How can we know if our spiritual practices are motivated by genuine aspiration
Right.
versus that desire for recognition?
The key is to honestly examine the motivations behind our actions.
Okay.
Are we engaging in these spiritual practices for genuine inner transformation?
Right.
Or are we just seeking some kind of validation from others?
It's like that saying, don't be so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good.
Right.
That true spiritual growth should lead to more compassion and service.
Exactly.
Not ego inflation.
It's about remembering that true spiritual growth is an inward journey, not a performance.
Right.
And that can be tricky to navigate, especially in this world with social media.
Where it's so easy to get caught up in presenting a certain image.
Totally. And then you mentioned polymathy avarice.
Yeah.
That insatiable thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
You mentioned you resonate with that a little bit.
I do.
Do you have any tips for recognizing when we've crossed the line from genuine curiosity to just knowledge hoarding?
For me, it comes down to asking myself, am I actually applying what I'm learning?
Okay.
It's not enough to just accumulate information.
Right.
The Sutta emphasizes putting knowledge into practice, sharing it with others, using it to benefit the world.
So it's like having a toolbox full of tools,
Right.
but never actually building anything.
Exactly.
You just have all this potential, but you're not actually realizing it.
It should be a tool for growth and positive action,
Yeah.
not just like a collection of facts gathering dust in our minds.
Right. And finally, we have adhigama avarice.
Yes.
That desire for recognition for your spiritual achievements.
Right.
This one seems particularly challenging
Yeah.
because in a lot of spiritual traditions, the goal is some kind of enlightenment or liberation.
Yeah.
So how do you balance striving for those lofty goals
Right.
without falling into that trap of spiritual egotism?
That's a good question. It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
The Sutta reminds us that true spiritual attainment, it's marked by humility and detachment,
So,
not pride and self-importance.
so it's not about becoming a spiritual superstar.
Exactly.
It's about cultivating that inner peace and wisdom
Yeah.
that naturally radiates outward.
It's about letting go of that need for external validation and just focusing on that transformative power of the journey itself.
Okay, so we've talked about those 4 types of avarice
Right.
and how to recognize them.
Yeah.
What about the positive side of this?
Right.
How do we actually cultivate apicasayam in our daily lives?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because it's one thing to understand it intellectually,
Right.
but how do we put it into practice?
That's where the real work begins.
Okay.
The Sutta doesn't give us a step-by-step guide. Right.
But it does offer some valuable insights. Remember that politician who refused the pay raise?
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of apicasayam in action.
He recognized that more money wasn't going to bring him more happiness or more fulfillment.
Exactly.
He was content with what he had.
Yes.
And he understood that true wealth lies in living a life that's aligned with his values.
Exactly. And that contentment, it stems from a deep understanding of our values and our priorities.
Okay.
So the first step I would say is to reflect on what truly matters to you.
Okay.
What brings you genuine joy and fulfillment?
Yeah.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Those are some big questions.
They are, but taking the time to really answer them honestly.
Right.
That's crucial for cultivating epicasium.
Yeah.
Once we have a clear sense of our values, then we can start aligning our actions accordingly.
So it's about making those conscious choices.
Yeah.
About how we spend our time, our energy, our resources.
Exactly.
Making sure that they're in alignment with our deepest values. Precisely. And it also involves becoming aware of our desires and our motivations.
Yeah.
Why do we want that new car, that bigger house, that promotion at work?
Yeah.
Is it truly aligned with our values and purpose?
Right.
Or are we just caught in that trap of wanting more?
I can see how that kind of self-reflection can be really transformative.
It is.
You're like shining a light on all those unconscious desires,
Yeah.
bringing them into conscious awareness.
And it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of observation and adjustment.
Yeah.
But with each mindful choice we make,
Okay.
each desire we question, we're moving closer to that state of apicasayam.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Like any journey, there will be bumps along the road.
For sure. The key is to keep practicing,
Okay.
to keep refining our understanding of apicasayam and how it applies to our lives.
So besides that ongoing self-reflection,
Yeah.
are there any other practical things we can do to cultivate apicasayam?
Absolutely. The Sutta emphasizes the importance of contentment. Okay.
Finding that peace and satisfaction with what we have right now.
But doesn't that kind of contradict the idea of striving for excellence or
Yeah.
setting goals?
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
not about becoming complacent or giving up on our dreams.
Right.
It's about finding joy in the present moment,
Okay.
rather than constantly chasing after something that we think we lack.
Okay.
We can still strive for improvement and set goals,
Right.
but we do it from a place of inner peace,
Right.
rather than from a sense of lack or deficiency.
It's like that saying, happiness is not having what you want, but wanting what you have.
Exactly. And there's so many practices that can help us cultivate contentment.
Okay.
Things like gratitude meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature.
Yeah, I love those practices. It's about creating a life that's rich in experiences and connections,
Yeah.
not just material things.
Precisely. Another important aspect of epicasayam is generosity.
Okay.
When we focus on sharing our resources and helping others, we naturally become less attached to material things. Right. It's like the more you give, the less you need.
Exactly. Generosity can take so many forms.
Yeah.
From volunteering our time to donating to charity
Yeah.
to simply offering a helping hand to someone in need.
So it's about shifting that focus
Yeah.
from me to we.
Exactly.
Recognizing that our well-being is connected with the well-being of everyone else.
Precisely. And when we start to live with that outward focus, we realize that true happiness and fulfillment,
Yeah.
they come from connection and compassion and contribution,
Yeah.
not from just accumulating more stuff.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
So we've talked about contentment, generosity, aligning our actions with our values. Any other practical tips for cultivating apicasayam?
Well, the Sutta highlights the importance of simplicity.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean we all have to live like monks
Right.
and renounce all worldly possessions.
Like for most of us, that's just not realistic.
Exactly. But it's about consciously choosing to simplify our lives wherever possible. This could be decluttering our homes, minimizing our commitments, or just being more mindful of our consumption habits.
So it's like creating space for what truly matters.
Exactly.
Less stuff, more meaning.
Precisely. And when we start to simplify our lives, we free up time and energy for things that nourish our souls,
Yeah.
like spending time with loved ones, pursuing creative passions, or just simply being present in the moment.
It's like hitting the reset button
Yeah.
on your life and just focusing on what brings you joy.
It's a powerful shift.
I love that.
And the beauty of apicasayam is that it's a practice anyone can embrace.
Yeah.
Regardless of their background, their beliefs, their lifestyle.
It's about finding that sweet spot between ambition and contentment.
Yeah.
Striving for excellence without getting lost in that endless pursuit of more.
Exactly. And when we cultivate apicasayam,
Yeah.
we not only find greater peace and fulfillment in our own lives,
Right.
but we also contribute to a more just and sustainable world.
Okay, so we've really unpacked this idea of apicasayam. But in a world that's, always telling us to want more, to strive for bigger and better.
Right.
How do we actually cultivate that sense of meagerness, rooted in wisdom,
Yeah.
and find true fulfillment?
Yeah, that's the question.
What are your thoughts?
It's definitely a challenge, especially in our modern world, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah.
What I find so powerful about this sutta
Okay.
is that it doesn't just advocate for like renouncing all material things.
Right.
It's about a much deeper shift in perspective.
Yeah, you're right.
Hmm.
It's recognizing that true wealth isn't about like accumulating more stuff.
Right.
It's about cultivating that wisdom, that compassion,
Yeah.
and living a life that's aligned with your purpose.
Exactly. So the invitation here isn't necessarily to like become a minimalist or go live in a cave.
Yeah.
It's about taking a step back and examining our own motivations,
Okay.
understanding what truly fuels our happiness,
Yeah.
and then making choices that reflect those values.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like finding a way to thrive in the world without being consumed by it.
Yeah.
You're engaging with it mindfully,
Yeah.
but you're recognizing both the beauty and the pitfalls.
Precisely. And it's important to remember this is a journey,
Okay.
not a destination.
Right.
There will be times when we get caught up in that wanting more trap.
Right. We're human.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It happens.
But the key is to just notice when it's happening,
Right.
gently course correct, and keep practicing.
It's like training a muscle, right?
It is.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
The more we exercise that apicchasaya muscle,
Yeah.
the stronger it becomes.
And the beautiful thing is,
Yeah.
the more we cultivate this in our own lives,
Right.
the more we inspire others to do the same.
Exactly. It creates this ripple effect
Yeah.
of positive change.
That's a really encouraging thought.
It is.
It reminds me that even these like small individual efforts
Yeah,
can make a difference.
they really can.
So we've explored this idea of vipassana,
Right.
the first of the 8 great man's thoughts. Any hints about what we'll be unpacking in our next deep dive?
Well, if apicchasayam is about clarifying our life's purpose
Right.
and focusing on what's essential,
Yeah.
the second quality is santuthi.
Also into
It delves even deeper into the nature of contentment.
contentment.
Yeah.
That's a quality I think we all need a little bit more of these days,
Yeah, we do.
especially these days.
Especially these days.
Can't wait to dive into that more with you.
Me too. It's a quality that's definitely more relevant than ever
Right.
in our fast-paced, hyper-consumerist world.
Yeah.
But until then,
Okay.
I encourage you to reflect on what we've discussed today.
Yeah.
And consider how you might cultivate a little bit more apicchasayam in your own life.
I love it. Great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Anuruddha Sutta. We'll see you next time as we continue exploring these 8 great man's thoughts together.